Well, I mean, imagine what sounding in real life as bellicose as these posts would be. It would be to stand in front of the nation and threaten Democratic members of Congress with state-sponsored execution. So that would be notable, I would say.
Welcome to Pod Save America. I'm Jon Favreau.
I'm Dan Pfeiffer.
On today's show, Trump caps off a rough week in the worst polls of the year by calling for Democrats' execution. Sure, that'll help. We'll also talk about how his attempts to prosecute people he doesn't like and his plan to rig the midterm map may have hit a few snags. Meanwhile, the House has come back to D.C. after a month off just in time to embarrass itself with a fresh spate of scandals. But don't worry, they're bipartisan in nature, Dan, so that's good.
Oh, fun.
Reaching across the aisle. Also, Zoran Mamdani dares to visit the White House on Friday for a chat with fellow New Yorker Donald Trump. And then Tommy talks to Yasmin Radjy of Swing Left about a new way of thinking about contacting and organizing voters. But let's start with the latest reason that the President of the United States should be committed to a mental institution. This morning, he repeatedly called for 6 Democratic members of Congress to be put to death by hanging in a series of about 20 posts on Truth Social. Trump was responding to a video posted by the 6 Democrats, all of whom either served in the military or intel community, reminding Americans currently serving that they're not obligated to follow unlawful orders. Here's a clip.
Right now, the threats to our Constitution aren't just coming from abroad, but from right here at home.
Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
Look, I think the music was a little much, but I wouldn't call for them to be hung over it. So that video set off a wave of hysteria among Republican politicians and Fox hosts, which eventually made its way to Trump, who called the Democrats, quote, traitors, who should be, quote, arrested, locked up, and tried for, quote, seditious behavior punishable by death, all caps. Mentioned seditious behavior in 3 separate posts. Wanted to make sure everyone also knew that it was punishable by death. And then for good measure, he reposted someone else saying, all caps, hang them. George Washington would. George Washington catching strays here. It all sounded quite similar to the reaction from Trump's second in command, Stephen Miller, who appeared on Fox a day before and said this.
It is insurrection, plainly, directly, without question. It's a general call for rebellion from the CIA and the armed services of the United States by Democrat lawmakers. These lawmakers should honestly resign in disgrace and never return to public office again. So when we say that Democrats are communists, we don't just mean that, well, they believe in the state control of property. We mean they've adopted a method of thinking in which any use of force is justified for their end state of power and control.
It's pretty bad when Stephen Miller sounds like the calmer one between him and Donald Trump. Gee, Dan, I wonder why those Democrats thought it was a good idea to remind the military that they aren't obligated to follow unlawful orders from the guy who then called on them to be hanged.
You raise an important point, John. You raise an important point. I got a couple of thoughts here. First, this is beyond the point. It's not really what we're here for, but Stephen Miller, obviously a very dangerous human being, but it's impossible to take a word he says seriously in the way he speaks.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's so, like he is the Saturday Night Live skit of himself, I guess. But just,
it's
absurd.
Yeah. It's like an angry, like fascist tone.
But it's like also with a weird accent and like with a staccato, like, I mean, it's just.
You're from Santa Monica. You're from fucking Santa Monica, dude.
Yeah, you should say dude, is what I think you're supposed to do in that case. Yeah, very, very strange. But there's a lot to unpack here. So one, why did these members of Congress do this? And it's because, I don't know, the administration is bombing boats in the ocean without any real explanation of what legal basis by which they are doing it. There's no authorization for use of military force for it. It's not clear who the enemy is. It's not clear what the evidence is to support this. When, as Alyssa Slotkin has pointed out, in the wake of all of this furor, they've asked repeatedly for what the legal basis is, and they basically get like the shrug emoji. It's like, we don't have to really tell you. And third point, these people are all fucking snowflakes. Trump, Miller, the rest of the Republicans, these people, all these members did in this video with the dramatic music and vertical videos was to remind members of the military and the intelligence community not to do illegal things. That's all it said. Didn't say don't follow legal orders. It didn't say don't listen to the commander in chief. It said we are reminding you as the co-equal branch of government who's part of the system of checks and balances put forward in the Constitution, reminding you that if you get an illegal order, you do not have to follow it, and you come to us and we will protect you. Like that is the point here. And you do protest too much because if you're not giving illegal orders, why do you care? If you are giving illegal orders, you care passionately.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Venezuela just as one example, or the extrajudicial killings off the coast of Venezuela and in the Caribbean that have so far no legal basis that at least the administration can provide. I don't know if you saw in the news, the Attorney General in the UK has told the government in the UK that maybe they should stop sharing intelligence with us because we, as the United States, are carrying out illegal killings based on no legal justification. The top lawyer at Southcom, which is the part of the military that's overseeing the strikes, has resigned, reportedly because this lawyer was telling people like there's no legal justification. And like you said, every letter that Democrats in Congress have sent to the administration asking for some evidence that these are combatants, some kind of legal justification, some kind of evidence that they're a threat to us, the people that they're killing in these boats, some kind of evidence of legal justification for this, they won't provide it. And in the New York Times story about this video, both Alyssa Slotkin, Mark Kelly, and others tell the Times that the genesis of this was like some folks in the military and the national security apparatus were coming to them and saying like, I'm concerned that we are killing civilians and could someday be held legally liable for that. The Uniform Code for Military Justice lays out very clearly that you should not obey unlawful orders. Now, the standard here is like if it's clear that it's unlawful to you, like if someone says, go kill that civilian or go take that non-combatant prisoner or torture that person, right? But still, we're in quite a gray area right now. And all they said was a reminder of what the law already states. That's it. They're not trying to say anything else but what the law states. So anyway, that's that, because it caused a whole... If Trump never did any of this today, it would still be a story just because of the fucking hysteria it caused on Fox News yesterday. And, you know, Jason Crow, who also served in the military, he's a Democratic member of Congress, he did an interview with Martha McCallum of Fox News, very contentious. He did a really good job, pushed back so hard that by the end she was on the defensive. But then, you know, we saw Stephen Miller with Will Cain. They were talking about it all day. And Republican, like Lindsey Graham is all upset about it. So they're all upset. But again, say you didn't like the video. Say you disagree with the video. Say you thought the video was inappropriate. All things that you can just say if you're a Republican. Don't have to necessarily call these people traitors that should be hung. The 6 Dems released a statement saying that they're not backing down, calling on all Americans to unite and condemn the president's call for their murder. Jeffries and Schumer both asked the Capitol Police for special protection for these members in anticipation of the death threats that are probably already coming or worse, targeted at those members. Caroline Leavitt at the White House briefing, she did say, no, the president does not actually want to execute Democrats.
Phew.
Which
Thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, which led to a Reuters headline, an all caps Reuters headline that's been sort of bouncing around the internet. White House says president does not want to execute Democrats, which is a real headline for the ages. She also falsely claimed that Democrats in the video urged the military to disobey legal orders. And
The opposite.
The opposite, which, you know, Caitlin Collins yelled to her as she left the briefing room, like, you misquoted Democrats. Nancy Cordes in the briefing room tried to push back and say, like, well, they were trying to say if they were legal orders. And Leavitt's like, well, all of our orders are legal. Oh, okay. Which actually does fit with their mindset, right?
Yeah, that is the point. If Trump says it, it's legal. This is why they don't have to provide. They don't need a authorization for use of military force from Congress. They don't need a declaration of war. They don't need anything. They don't even need some of the very sketchy legal rationales that administrations of both parties, including ours, use to justify all kinds of things post 9/11. They don't even need that. If it comes out of Trump's mouth, it is therefore a valid order. And that is the exact point that these members of Congress are making.
Yes. And I do think it's interesting what gets the administration really angry. And it is when either courts or now Democratic members of Congress or the press push back against grave abuses of power and executive overreach, because they really do believe, particularly around immigration and national security, that literally anything the president does goes. And when you challenge that, when a judge challenges that, when a Democratic member of Congress challenges that, they can't take it and they go berserk because they want to have this power. That's core to the rationale for this presidency.
Do you think that Trump, like, I believe Stephen Miller is genuinely upset about this because any questioning of Trump's power causes him to do it, and any, honestly, excuse to threaten Democrats with death is high on his list of things to do. Do you think that this is something they're legitimately worked up about, or a fight they're looking for to kind of change the subjects in the midst of this very, very bad week that they're having that we're about to talk about?
Could be both. I could definitely see Stephen Miller's obviously worked up about it. I could see Stephen Miller spinning up the president about it, because I do think he's one of his main primary sources of information, which is partly why we're in such trouble. And then I could imagine, if I had to bet, the next time we see Trump and he speaks about it, he doesn't sound as crazy as the posts, because sometimes he does that. In real life, he sounds he sounds crazy, but he sounds less bellicose than some of his posts.
Well, I mean, imagine what sounding in real life as bellicose as these posts would be. It would be to stand in front of the nation and threaten Democratic members of Congress with state-sponsored execution. So that would be notable, I would say.
I will say, as I was prepping for the pod and right after this happened, like, I was looking around for the story. It was all over Twitter, of course, and it was on cable. We were watching Fox. Fox did mention it, though the way that Fox framed the whole thing was that, Trump lashes back at Democrats for urging military to disobey orders, But it wasn't like leading the New York Times or the Post. And I've long stopped my media criticism because I think a lot of journalists work, and tomorrow's headlines may be different, but I don't know if it's just a reflection of how much news there is or how inured we are to Trump saying crazy shit like this. But I don't know. The president of the United States calling for Democrats to be hanged seems like it should be the top story everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I think this is as much a media problem as it is a cultural problem, where we are sort of uncomfortably numb to Trump. And this really is not 2017 stuff where he would say, he called people, like he would just say back then, guilty of treason. And then we would say, treason is a crime punishable by death. He's calling for the execution of this person. Because back then, as much as we worried about it, there was no follow through. There actually were people trying to prevent him from following through by just distracting him like a small child, or a bird with a shiny object. But we are like 72 hours away from the president telling the attorney general to investigate a bunch of Democrats for no reason as a distraction ploy from the Epstein files, and the attorney general doing that.
Yep.
So like these words should carry more weight in how they're thought about and how we worry about them. And I'm not saying that these people are going to be executed, but the president's words matter, and they matter when we know for a fact that the Justice Department will do what the president wants, no matter how ridiculous, how illegal, how unconstitutional, how unethical. And so, yeah, it should be a big, huge, important topic of conversation, which is why we're leading the podcast with this.
Well, and
not gonna criticize us out there, people.
Right, like, just to be clear, even if the Justice Department says tomorrow they're just opening an inquiry, an investigation into these Democrats for that video, it's fucking constitutionally protected free speech that is, again, them restating what the law says. Just
in vertical video.
Yes. With unfortunate music. Again, but other than that, totally legitimate. Legal, legitimate, totally fine.
Yeah, there's some poor Senate digital person who put together a video that was so newsworthy that it has caused a major news cycle, and you have two assholes like us criticizing the music. It's like,
you know what? I'm proud of you all for doing the video. We need some levity here. And
You need levity, and you need some levity in the illegal orders video.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
we
no,
need
no,
we need
we
levity
need
talking
levity.
about. Oh, I thought you wanted to put some jokes in the
I'm
video.
not looking for a fucking punchline in the video.
Okay.
No,
All right.
don't worry about that.
Fair enough. I think we can't leave this without pointing out that it was only a few months ago that the entire country, led by the Republican Party, had a massive conversation about how rhetoric could lead to political violence and how Democrats saying things like Trump is an authoritarian or Trump is a fascist has led to violence against Republicans. And now you have the President of the United States calling for the hanging of members of Congress, and all these same people, J.D. Vance, most prominently among all of them, has been quite quiet about this. Now, not that we are going to be surprised by hypocrisy from these people, but I just think you can't leave the subject without pointing out just how short the Republican concern with political violence actually was.
And that's why, like, again, I don't really care about pointing out the hypocrisy at this point. I hope that all of these Republicans, media figures, politicians, who said that political rhetoric can incite violence, who wanted everyone to condemn violence, condemn calls for violence, condemn language that could incite violence, will now condemn this. This is their chance to show that it was not just a partisan motivation to saying that, but that it was genuine. And so if it is genuine, then you should call that out. I think, for example, that Jay Jones's texts were fucking gross.
Yes, absolutely.
And crazy and bad. And I would like to hear, I don't know, a handful of Republicans say this about Donald Trump. I heard John Thune say that it was over the top.
His response, I'm paraphrasing his response, was basically like, I agree with his criticism. I disagree with how he handled it, or I disagree with his solution to the problem.
I think Lindsey Graham also said he was a little over the top, but
yeah.
He's never been more upset by anything than the video. So they're all pivoting to the video. But I would like a real condemnation. I guess like Don Bacon said the video was bad, and then he said what Trump did was worse. That's like that's the right zone.
That's good.
That's the right zone, Don Bacon.
I would say, in fairness, it's 3:21 on the West Coast as we're recording this right now. Not very many people have done it. It is possible that they all have an epiphany between the ending of this recording and when you all hear it on Friday morning, and this will look foolish.
Fingers
but
crossed.
But if not, hypocrisy noted.
So even before Trump called for executing members of Congress, it's pretty clear he's been going through something this week. Per usual, he tends to go full Mad King when he feels politically cornered, which is why he spent the week lashing out at reporters and selling the rest of us extra hard on his demented version of reality. Here's a sample.
Mr. President, why wait for Congress to release the Epstein files? Why not just do it now?
You know, it's not the question that I mind, it's your attitude. I think you are a terrible reporter. It's the way you ask these questions. You start off with a man who's highly respected, asking him a horrible, insubordinate, and just a terrible question. They came up with a new word, affordability. And they look at we were all about affordability, and everyone assumes that meant that, no, their prices were high. They said, sir, if George Washington and Abraham Lincoln came back from the dead and they aligned and they went for the president, vice president as a combination, you'd be beating them by 25 points.
So true, so true. Lots to unpack there. For those who couldn't hear the first clip, that was Trump on Air Force One telling a female reporter, "Quiet, piggy." So that's something that happened this week. Then he was in the Oval, yelling at another female reporter for asking a very respected man a tough question. That would be the Saudi royal prince, who had a Washington Post columnist brutally killed and dismembered. And you're not supposed to ask someone with that kind of reputation such a bad question.
In that question, the most notable word is he calls her question insubordinate, which is very telling about how he thinks about the power dynamics here.
Yes. And like the irony is not lost that he's sitting next to the guy who ordered the killing of a journalist, and Trump is the one who really can't fucking handle journalist questions. Because you know what, Trump, and then we haven't even talked about this. I know Tommy and Ben cover it on Pod Save the World, but just the fucking disgusting way that Trump handled the question about Jamal Khashoggi that came to him in that meeting, in that pool spray with MBS. And he said, well, he was a controversial guy, and things happen.
Do you know any other controversial people, Donald Trump? And if so, might you be careful about suggesting that would be justification for, I don't know, being bonesawed? Like, what? It was honestly this is not the topic here again, but the entire MBS celebration in the White House, all the business leaders and tech billionaires who went and the fucking Fox News anchors like Brett Baer and Maria Bartiromo who toasted with MBS after this. It's just, the whole thing is so gross. It is so gross. All of them, some of them are not capable of shame, and Brett Baer may be one of those people who's not capable of shame, but the rest of them, Tim Cook, etc., should absolutely be embarrassed by the way they handle themselves in the situation. You don't have to toast a murderous dictator. That is not a required part of your job.
He respects power and money and nothing else. And people with power and money, no matter how they behave, no matter how disgusting they may be, no matter what crimes they commit, you have the respect of Donald Trump if you are powerful and rich. And if you are not, it doesn't matter how you're treated.
Today's presenting sponsor is Simply Safe Home Security. Is your home actually safe if you have old school home security? Traditional security systems respond after someone breaks in. Simply Safe is different because it can stop crimes before they happen with its Active Guard outdoor protection. High-tech cameras detect threats while they're still outside your home and alert real security agents. This is a game changer. The agents take action while the intruder is still outside. They confront the intruder, letting them know they're being watched on camera and that police are on their way, and even sounding a loud siren and triggering a spotlight if needed. This is how you stop crime before it starts. Other systems have cameras that let you talk to intruders, but they require you to see the alert yourself. Simply Safe's monitoring agents have your back and talk to intruders even if you aren't there. There's no long-term contracts or hidden fees. You can cancel anytime. Named Best Home Security Systems by U.S. News & World Report for 5 years in a row. 60-day money-back guarantee. You can try it and see the difference for yourself. I've set up a Simply Safe. Incredibly easy to do. Customize it for your home. Works great. App's great. Customer support is great. Don't miss out.
What's not great?
What's
Nothing.
not great? Nothing's not great. Don't miss out on Simply Safe's biggest sale of the year, 60% off. Right now, our listeners can get 60% off on a Simply Safe home security system at simplysafe.com/crooked. That's simplysafe.com/crooked. There's no safe like Simply Safe. Pod Save America is brought to you by Chili Pad by Sleep Me. Are you sweating through the winter while your furnace is set to sauna? Even worse, your significant other loves a toasty bed, but you're roasting alive under a pile of blankets. And let's be honest, if your sleep sucks, everything else sucks a little bit more. It's not just about how long you sleep, it's about how well. And surprise, science tells us temperature plays a huge role. That's where Chili Pad by Sleep Me comes in, the luxury temperature regulating mattress topper that keeps you perfectly cool, even when the heat's on full blast, because quality sleep shouldn't depend on the thermostat that's happening in your bedroom. I love Chili Pad. I have it. It's awesome. It's awesome. Every night when I'm like going to watch a show in bed, I bring the temperature way down. I get it really cold. We're talking in the 60s. It's awesome. You get in bed, you can do it from the app. You turn it on, you feel your bed get colder beneath you. It's so
Such a
cool.
good feeling.
It's awesome. Then time for bed. I turn it up, John. I turn it up to 83 degrees.
You know what? That's
83 degrees. Then I put my phone into it's the last thing I do before I go to bed. You can set the timer, but I'm not good at that. So I just turn it and then, oh my gosh, because you think 83 sounds hot, but it's not. It's actually not, because you would heat the bed up more yourself. 83, it's like the bed is warm, but not hot. It's awesome. Awesome. Sleep so much better.
Able to stand that.
Great. Love this thing. And by the way, like, especially in the summer, you're like, oh, I got to turn the AC all the way down. You don't have to make your room as cold because your bed is cold. You only sleep on the bed. Why are you cooling the ceiling? You know, I'm a huge fan of this thing. Buy it. I've done this has to be a good endorsement. You're hearing the real endorsement.
It's real.
So pretend I read all these facts and figures, but just go on the website and buy the thing. Visit sleep.me/crooked to get 20% off your Chili Pad with code crooked. It's a mattress topper. It's an air conditioner mattress topper. It's cool. Just get one. Get one. You save so much money. Get 20% off your Chili Pad with code crooked.
What can we do to put you in a Chili Pad?
That's up to $540 off. www.sleep.me/crooked. That's sleep.me/CROOKED. Free shipping, free returns, 30-night trial. You can test it out. You can dream big. You can wake up better. Chili sleep. Sleep cooler. Recover faster. Perform better. Sleep.me/crooked.
So clearly this is him. He's lashing out everywhere. He's pissed. let's talk about all the things that are causing him to lose his shit, and then we can talk about how bad the polls have gotten for him and his party. First up is the Epstein files, the release of which is now required by law, thanks to a bill passed by both houses of Congress in a near unanimous vote and signed by Trump himself. He wasn't happy about it, though, and promised in a very long and rambling post that the Epstein files would backfire on the Democrats, who were just using the issue to distract from all of Trump's incredible victories on things like bringing down costs and inflation. The question now is which files Trump's Department of Justice will actually release and when. Pam Bondi was asked about this and would only offer variations on we will follow the law, we will follow the law. How do you think Bondi and crew are going to handle this?
I think you have to go back to the fundamental premise here, which is that Donald Trump is deathly afraid of something in the Epstein files. Now, whether he knows what that thing is or he just generally has a vague recollection of his conduct in the Palm Beach in the 90s, I don't know. But he thinks there is something very bad and very embarrassing in there. And we know that Pam Bondi will do anything she possibly can to protect Donald Trump from things that are bad and embarrassing. And so my suspicion is that she will use the very understandable provision in the disclosure law, which says the Justice Department does not have to release files that are related to an ongoing investigation as a way to not release some files. Notably, as we mentioned earlier, she started a bunch of new Epstein investigations over the weekend, which could be a way in which a putative reason to prevent disclosure of some of these files.
I have to imagine that if she just does that for too long, there's got to be a chance for a lawsuit there for the Justice Department or for someone to say like, hey, this is the law. We don't know. There's no proof that you're engaging in any kind of investigation. You already said that you investigated everything and there was no reason for any additional charges. Now she's saying, oh, new information came to light. Okay, what's the new information? I guess potentially the emails from the estate that we've all been pouring over the last couple of weeks, but I don't fucking know.
And I think those would be in the files too.
Yeah, maybe, though. Why weren't they released?
Because they didn't release the files. That's the thing.
Well, they released thousands of pages to the Oversight Committee, but
not the ones that had Donald Trump's name in them. These are the difference here is these had Donald Trump's name in them and a bunch of other people. Maybe they have, maybe they don't.
It's just weird that they came from the estate and not the file.
Well, the estate complied with the subpoena from Congress,
right?
The Department of Justice did not, which has gotten lost in this. I don't like, and there will be political pressure here because Republicans now have all voted for this, and they've broken with Donald Trump on their Epstein files once. They think this matters to their base. And if he really drags his feet in a way that is like embarrassing to them, I think you will see bipartisan political pressure be put on him.
Believe it or not, there is reason to doubt the basic competence of a Justice Department that is now
not this Justice Department.
I mean, I know Pam Bondi. It's she's consider the news this week that the DOJ's transparently political prosecution of James Comey may be falling apart. Surprise, surprise. Not exactly shocking when you remember that to get the indictment, Trump had to fire the Trump-appointed U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia and install one of his lackeys, Lindsey Halligan, who had never previously ever tried a case in front of a judge, which shows. And she had to bring the case against Comey because no other prosecutor in the office out of a couple hundred employees would sign the indictment. So she had to do it herself. Then, in a hearing this week on Comey's motion to dismiss the case as politically motivated, Halligan admitted to the judge that she never showed the full grand jury the updated version of the indictment after they had to toss one of the counts. Then, her second in command admitted that his predecessors had drafted a memo outlining why they didn't bring charges against Comey when Trump ordered them to do so the first time. He admitted on top of that that the Deputy Attorney General's office had told him not to acknowledge the existence of that memo in open court. Right before we recorded, these two morons were filing some paperwork to clean up the indictment issue, but all of these disclosures make it seem much more likely, and the judge made it seem much more likely in his comments, that the case could be thrown out altogether. For a team just dedicated solely to retribution, does it surprise you they couldn't even pull that off?
Yeah, no, it doesn't actually, because this is one of those things where the job to be the patsy who is supposed to engage in this prosecution that every career attorney already said there was no evidence for. Anyone who would accept that job is obviously someone so lacking in competence, skill, intelligence, and dignity to actually execute the job well, even as hard as it was. So the fact that Lindsay Halligan was willing to accept this offer is proof that she was going to fuck this up. Like that's like it is. So yeah, I mean, could they have? I guess maybe it is surprising that they were unable to find a person in the entire Trump administration who had actually presented evidence in a court of law before to take this job. Like I mean, I assume there are just attorneys running around everywhere, like there is in every government. But instead, they ended up with this person who had even less experience. Basically, was that they took a person off the street to do this, and that person failed. And I guess that should be encouraging to everyone who's spending a lot of money and going into debt to go to law school.
I think even if they got the most skilled attorney you could find on this case, maybe it doesn't get thrown out at this stage, and you don't forget to show the grand jury the updated indictment. But it seems like the facts of the case are the real problem here.
Yeah, it's the embarrassing way in which this happened. Like, there's a world in which you truly get the best prosecutor alive, send them in there. They take the bad evidence and present it, and they dot all the I's and cross all the T's, and then it just gets tossed, or you lose a jury trial. But the fact that you've failed to show them the indictment, that you had to admit basically lying by omission to the court about a piece of exculpatory evidence is just so embarrassing. It makes this whole thing look even dumber than it already was. And that is frankly enjoyable to me personally.
It is enjoyable. And it's not to say that like people shouldn't be worried and that this all isn't dangerous, because I do think there are plenty of examples of cases that are borderline, should they be charged, should they not be charged? And then the desire to prosecute your perceived enemies is what puts it over the line. I think like the John Bolton case, let's just pretend, let's imagine, because we actually don't know all the facts. We haven't seen the case yet. But you could imagine a case where the Biden administration looked into this. They decided not to prosecute, not to bring an indictment against John Bolton. Now the Trump team maybe there is enough evidence there to convict John Bolton. And it would be because, it wouldn't have happened without a push to politically prosecute his enemy, for Trump's enemy, And so there is a lot of danger there. But I do think when some of these cases like a Comey, Letitia James, where we're starting to see more and more of the facts of the case, and it's just like there is just no wrong. There's not even any illegality. There's just like not even wrongdoing. There's not even like ethical gray areas here. It's just nothing.
There is a difference when it is someone as prominent and powerful and presumably well off as like a Jim Comey, or has the resources of a Letitia James, or as a United States senator. Where it gets scarier is when it's people further down the food chain, right? Like LaMonica McIver, who is a member of Congress, but is not as well known and is in a very precarious position.
Or Kat Abu, who's running for Congress in Illinois.
People who have just simply protested or argued against or defended immigrants or done something again to upset the ICE people. Like there is the political prosecutions, because even if you don't get the conviction, you can do tremendous reputational financial damage to someone just by pursuing the case to begin with. And some of the people who are going to get off at the front are the people who had the best opportunity to survive that, even if they had not fucked up the indictment and possibly ended the case, sort of in the at the outset.
Yeah, like Michael Dreeben is Jim Comey's lawyer, who's like one of the best lawyers, like practiced before the Supreme, tried cases before the Supreme Court and everything. So, so related story about the goobers at the DOJ. A federal grand jury in Maryland appears to be looking into whether Trump's mortgage fraud czar, Bill Pulte, and his retribution czar, Ed Martin, may have brought in unauthorized people to go after Adam Schiff for mortgage fraud, potentially Tish James as well. It's very confusing what they're looking into here, because it seems really hard to believe that Trump or Bondi would let a federal grand jury investigate Pulte or Ed Martin. But what do you think's going on here? It's also possible that they may be looking into people who tried to say they were Pulte or Ed Martin or worked for them who were unauthorized. So, because I can't imagine the government going after the government.
Yeah, well,
I mean, I can in a normal administration, but not this one.
So I think there are a couple of different things here. One, as you say, we don't really know. All we know is that is the press have seen subpoenas that have been issued to some conservative activists and congressional candidate, which includes Pulte, Martin, and some other names of people who may or may not have claimed to have been part of. They seem to want to know if there are certain people who would not be involved in the investigation who may be claiming to have had authority to be involved in it. In terms of how this could happen, I think there are two ways it could happen. One is it just slipped through the system. Right, just like this is not the Cracker Jack team over here at the Department of Justice, and so it just sort of happened. Pam Bondi didn't read an email and went forward. Or the other way is there's a fair amount of reporting that various members of the Department of Justice leadership really hate Bill Pulte. It's like the one thing we all have in common, and Ed Martin.
Also, soybean farmer Scott Bessent, who's almost punched him in the face twice.
Yes, lots of people are. You can sort of see a world where maybe this came, and like the one time Pam Bondi was like, "I don't know, just proceed. You do as you would do. I'll stay out of this and let that go." So I'll be interested to see where this goes. But either way, it seems quite enjoyable and fun, and like we're having kind of a. We started off with potential execution of Democratic members of Congress, but the rest of this podcast is pretty light and fun, and this is light and fun.
I will say I did look at, they named the U.S. attorney who signed the subpoena and impaneled the grand jury from the Eastern District of Maryland, did get that job in 2022.
Interesting.
So I'm sort of wondering now, like that's to maybe it didn't get to Pam Bondi's desk, and it was actually someone working in the Justice Department who's not a Trump lackey, but I don't know.
That person might be finding a new job soon.
Yeah, no, exactly. We shall see. Then we'll really know.
You know what's going to happen to that person? They're going to get investigated for mortgage fraud.
Yeah, hope that guy only has one house.
That's right.
So anyway, in the midst of all the chaos we just talked about, one thing seems crystal clear: the president is focused like a laser on affordability, Dan. And guess what? The American people have started to notice. Allow me to read you a Fox News headline about their newest poll, hot off the presses. Poll was out Wednesday. Quote, voters say White House is doing more harm than good on economy. That is on foxnews.com. 76% of voters have a negative view of the economy in the Fox poll, worse than the 70% who said the same at the end of Biden's term. Twice as many voters blame Trump instead of Biden for the current state of the economy. 3 times as many voters say Trump's economic policies have hurt them versus helped them. And the president's approval rating is 41%, 58% disapprove. And it is record high disapproval among men, white voters, and those without a college degree. Obviously, Trump's core demographics. It is just one poll, but most of them are saying the same thing. I could have read any of them. Nate Silver's average has Trump sitting at 41.5% approval, easily the lowest approval of his second term, and close to the lowest of his first term. In fairness, Dan, these polls were taken before Trump spent the week glazing the Saudi royals, who've made his family billions of dollars richer, and the tech billionaires who are building him a $300 million ballroom. You think that'll move the numbers once that information is absorbed?
I think that was an excellent use of glazing, Curtis Lewa. Good job.
It's for Elijah.
It's a very that's you if you know that joke, you're terminally online. That's right. No, I don't think that's going to help, John. I do not. I think he is in a very, very, very precarious place politically, and the fact that he is a lame duck president makes it that much harder to get out of this place. Because when you get to this place, and Obama got in his first term, not this far down, but he got into the low 40s, you can come back when it becomes, as your reelection as the reelection race ramps up, as the primary on the other side gets up, and you start doing, to quote Joe Biden, the voters compare you to the alternative, not the almighty. But when you're a lame duck, this is why you're a lame duck. You very rarely come back from that, right? This is like you were in George W. Bush territory here. You were on the precipice of the bottom falling out. And maybe he can come back. Trump has come back from the political graveyard many, many times, but he's in a very, very bad place, and he doesn't have a lot of good solutions to get out of this.
And I will say, I think the bulk of the disapproval is around just the state of the economy and how people are feeling about the economy, right? Like, and I think, Joe Biden was not doing all the corruption that Donald Trump is doing, and was not, building the ballroom and taking Qatari jets and all that shit. And he still had a very high disapproval around the economy because people, whatever they thought about Joe Biden, they were just pissed that he didn't bring costs down, right? Trump is adding to people's anger over high prices by every time people look at the news, or even casual news observers, what are they seeing? They see, and it's very funny that after the off-year elections, they were like, well, even the White House political advisors were acknowledging, like, he's just so focused on foreign policy, and every time there's an event at the White House, he's with all these like foreign leaders, or he's talking about these deals with like CEOs. So what does he do this week? Of all the foreign leaders, he's got the Saudi royal family, who has just made his family so much money. He's like talking about deals with them. He's got fucking. He's got Elon and the besties and the fucking AI guys at the White House with the Saudis, and they're all fucking taking pictures together, and there's the gold everywhere. Like, what are you doing?
I will say this one small thing in defense of the White House staff, which is I'm sure the MBS state dinner or whatever you call it and meeting was planned far in advance, because I would say many times in my life in the White House, I'd be like, man, we are in a tough place. We got to focus on the economy. Let me break out the old week ahead block schedule and see what's happening the next couple of weeks. Motherfucker.
But you know what?
What has Ben Rhodes put on the schedule this week?
True. But guess who shouldn't have planned a fucking state dinner for Mr. Bonesaw? Like,
well, that is nothing. That is a different question. But the problem here is they can say that they want affordability to be their message. Affordability can never be their message, because Donald Trump, somewhat like Joe Biden, is chemically incapable of saying the things you need to say to appeal to people in affordability, because to say
reasons.
No, it's for the same. I think it's for the same reason. Yeah. It's pride, because to say that costs are too high is to admit you have failed, and that this was Biden's problem with the economy always. Is he was even it was the White House talking points would say the right thing, the written statements would say the right thing, the parts on the teleprompter would say the right things, and then Joe Biden would start saying how great the economy was. And Trump is the same way. And it's actually magnified with Trump, because they put in place a policy. Biden just kind of failed to solve a problem he probably couldn't solve anyway. Trump has taken a problem he can't solve and made it much worse. And you saw this you guys talked about this on the Tuesday pod, but when Kevin Hassett was on the shows, they was like, I mean, just truly one of the worst messengers in the history of messaging. But they were like, he's like, I got good news for people. We're eliminating the tariffs on groceries and food and all of this. And they're like, oh, so you're saying that tariffs raise the prices? And he's like, no, I'm not saying that at all. He's like, no, but
then how's
if the prices are coming down, how's that going to help? He's like, prices are down. I don't know what you're talking about. John, Carl, or whoever he was doing the interview with. It's like you can't do it. Trump cannot be a good messenger on affordability. It is impossible for him to do.
Even J.D. Vance, who's supposed to be the smarter one, I guess, between him and Trump.
Yeah, congratulations.
He tried out a version of a better message at an event on Thursday with Breitbart's Matt Boyle, where he was like, look, we've made some progress, but there's a lot more to do. And we really think the economic boom is coming, and we're going to work harder for that. And then he's like, what I would ask of the American people right now is patience. Matt, I was like, what is that? You're asking people patience? You have been in the White House for a year. You have raised prices based on your own tariff policy. While you're asking everyone else to be patient, the president and his family have made billions of dollars flaunting it in front of everyone, accepting gold bars, literal gold bars from the Swiss. And
that's the other thing.
And
here.
other gold-plated things from fucking Tim Apple and all the rest of it. I mean, it's just like anytime you look at Donald Trump in the White House, you are seeing gold, you are hearing about deals, you are reading stories about his family making money. He's fucking focused on renovations at the White House. That's his like main focus. So he can build like a $300 million ballroom paid for by the oligarchs. And then they're telling everyone else who is struggling to just like make ends meet to be patient.
Yes. And this is you hit on the exact other point why he cannot succeed with an affordability message, is because people are mad about the economy. Absolutely. And they would probably be willing to give Trump a little bit of that patience that J.D. Vance is asking for, except for two things. One, he keeps saying he already solved the problem. And we know from focus groups in circa 2009, that will cause people to flip the fucking table over when you tell them you solved the problem and they're still upset. Because in that Fox poll, majorities of Republicans believe that the costs of groceries, healthcare, housing, all of these things are up over last year. Not up over Trump 2017 or 2020 pre-COVID, up since Trump got into office, these things are up. Majorities of Republicans believe that. Then the other issues is they turn on the TV or they open up to their phone and Trump's doing everything but solve this problem. Right, you're right. He's palling around these rich people. He's giving $20 billion to Argentina. He's building the ballroom. He's doing all this. He is rubbing it in people's faces at the exact moment. Like he's doing everything you possibly can.
They're talking about how people on food, they're going to cut food stamps, and people on food stamps are lazy, and Russ Vought is talking about how he's just delighting, and here comes the Reaper, remember? And he's like delighting and fucking cutting jobs and firing people and laying people off. I mean, it's wild how little they fucking care. So Trump's stink is starting to rub off on Republicans in Congress. A new NPR Marist poll has Democrats up 14 points on the generic ballot, their largest lead in the Marist poll since 2017. That is a bit of an outlier. A national poll from Marquette has Democrats up 5. I think the overall average right now is about Democrats plus 6, which is still pretty significant lead this far out and larger than it has been over the last several months or last year even. Trump and Republicans have been hoping to hang on to their majority through some last-minute gerrymandering, though that scheme also hit a roadblock this week when federal judges threw out Texas's new map, which was intended to deliver 5 extra Republican seats. In a 2-1 decision in which a Trump appointee joined an Obama appointee, the panel said the new district lines constituted an illegal racial gerrymander. Trump has appealed to the Supreme Court, but Trump's redistricting blitz already wasn't going well. A judge in Utah ruled against Republicans and implemented a map that could give Democrats another seat. Probably it will give Democrats another seat if it stands.
Certainly will.
Yeah, it's like a Harris
plus 23
or 24 district.
23, 24, yeah.
And Republican holdouts in the Indiana state legislature appear to have sunk redistricting there, even though Trump has been going after them by name and threatening to fund primaries against them. Meanwhile, here in California, we passed Prop 50 in response, and Democrats in Virginia are now attempting new maps that could add 2 to 3 Democratic seats there. It looks like in total, Democrats could pick up as many as 9 seats, while Republicans' best-case scenario in places like Missouri, North Carolina, and Ohio would give them about 4. If Ron DeSantis succeeds in Florida, it could give them another 2 to 5.
2 to 3.
Yeah.
2
to
probably
3,
3,
maybe?
I think. Yeah.
And then we'll see what the Supreme Court says about Texas and whether or not they overturn a key part of the Voting Rights Act in time for the midterms, which could net Republicans even more seats throughout the South, particularly if it happens and they're allowed to change the maps before the midterms. What is your take on this Texas situation and overall thoughts about how the math is netting out right now or could net out?
The Texas thing is legitimately funny. Like, I'm going to stipulate that I'm going to presume the Supreme Court's going to come to Trump's rescue here in some way, shape, or form. They are pretty... Even before Trump, the Roberts Court has been very anti-Voting Rights Act, and so you could I'm operating the assumption that they will get their 5 seats. But the thing that's funny about it is we had Gavin Newsom on the podcast right after he announced this thing, and one of the big arguments was we're putting in a provision that says if our maps only go into effect if Texas does it. Well, then Texas did it like a week later, so they took that provision out of the law. And so the California maps stay no matter what Texas does. And it would be just so goddamn funny if after all of this, everything Trump did, they come out of this down a few seats. Very amusing. On the math.
Wait, before we get off that, because I thought you were going to say something else is amusing about it, which is how fucking stupid Texas was in giving the reason for the gerrymander.
Yes, well, because Trump also told them to do it, and it's not a good fact pattern for them.
So just so people know, partisan redistricting is allowed because the Supreme Court has said that. What they haven't done yet is overturn redistricting because of race. And so if Texas had merely said, we are redrawing the maps because we want to help Donald Trump get 5 seats, the map would be legal right now. But instead, Trump's Department of Justice, again, a real theme today,
Yes.
The Department of Justice sent a fucking letter to Texas that was like, hey, we want you to racially gerrymander. Basically. And then when they had the case, they kept saying, no, we didn't. And they're like, well, what about the letter? Like, the fact pattern is clear that you did racially gerrymander. And I think I agree that, like, I would not be surprised if the Supreme Court stepped in here to save them. But remember, in the Voting Rights Act case, what the Supreme Court, or at least what the majority could argue, is by drawing majority-minority districts, it is ensuring in the South that black voters have representation, that by drawing districts that are heavily filled with black voters, that is racial gerrymandering, and that you can't be doing that. So that's what we disagree, but that's what Roberts and Kavanaugh and them potentially could be arguing here, or could decide. In Texas, and I think this is why you had a Trump appointee say that this is illegal. In Texas, they are basically saying, we did this for racial reasons, which I think even if the Roberts Court strikes down the Voting Rights Act, would say is wrong.
Yes. As I understand it with my non-law school basis, the issue in the case is not in the Supreme Court case, is not that you're allowed to racially gerrymander. It's that majority minority districts are not a constitutional solution to racial gerrymandering.
Yes. Well said.
And so to be clear, people would racial gerrymander out the wazoo if it's struck down. They just would not put it in a letter. That's the difference.
Right. You can easily gerrymander, say that it's for partisan reasons, and it could be very racial in nature, for sure.
Yes, and it would have to be.
Yes.
Given the demographics would have to be.
So, all right, let's talk. Considering the direction the polls are headed, how are you feeling about the House in general in a scenario where Republicans do pick up a bunch of seats, but maybe not as many seats as we thought they would?
Let's take striking down Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act happening on a schedule, which would really have to be in the first couple of months of next year, because the South has primaries in like March and April. And to make this really work, you kind of have to do it befone the primaries, because you have to redraw the maps and all of that. So let's just pretend like that's not going to happen before the 2026 elections. Nate Cohn went through and did this math about like all the different paths that could happen and let's say everything goes the way we thought. Texas maps come back. Democrats get some seats in Virginia, Republicans get some in Florida. We really only have to win the popular vote by like 3 points, I think, to very likely take the House. We'll win the generic ballot by 3 points. I think we're well positioned either way, but obviously we want to build as big a majority as possible. And so you need, to use the phrase we've used before, too big to rig. Like you want to get to a bigger number. Republicans are not, I do not think, absent the Voting Rights Act, able to rig this in a way in which it is out of reach for Democrats. We are in a political situation where a majority is very, very viable. It's, harder than it should be because of some of these gerrymandering, but we can win it.
And even if the Texas map goes into effect, we've said this before, but if there is a large Democratic wave, it also, the gerrymander may have backfired in that they may have drawn districts where they think that they are going to be safe Republican, but in a wave election, they are not Republican. They are not safe.
Yes, and this is there might be some Republicans in Texas who are actually quietly grateful about these maps being struck down, because they really drew these maps based on Donald Trump's 2024 performance with Texas Latinos. And as I pointed out on this podcast before, if you look at at Beto O'Rourke's 2022 performance with Texas Latinos, he actually won Latinos in a race he lost by a lot. And then that's in the past. Look at in Beto's 2022 governor's race. But then if you look at what happened in New Jersey, in particular, where the two most Latino-heavy cities moved 50 points in Mike Michelle's direction compared to where they were in 2024. That should really scare the shit out of Republicans. Like they might have really building levees when you when you do redistricting, you draw districts, and the more you dilute your base by trying to pick up more seats, you lower the levy. So you don't need as big a wave to go over them and win. So if they're at risk here if we have a big enough wave. It doesn't have to be 14 points, which would be a net gain of about 65 to 70 seats, I think. But something that looks like 2018 would be very worrisome for Republicans. And things, at least at this point, are kind of heading in that direction.
So reasons for hope. One of the many reasons Congress is about as popular as herpes right now might have to do with the.
Did you look up herpes polling numbers?
Yes. Yeah. No.
Okay, you did.
It's definitely it's like right around chlamydia, but
Okay.
definitely better off than syphilis.
Okay, syphilis, never a favorite.
Might have to do with the recent string of scandals in the House this week that range from embarrassing to corrupt to allegedly criminal. First, there was the revelation that Democrat Chuy Garcia of Illinois hid his last-minute retirement announcement from everyone except his chief of staff so that she'd be the only candidate who could get the required 2,000 signatures in time to meet the filing deadline, a move that led Democratic Congresswoman Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez of Washington to force a vote rebuking Garcia that passed the House on Tuesday. Then there was a talk of a censure resolution against Democrat Stacey Plaskett, the non-voting delegate for the Virgin Islands, for texting with Jeffrey Epstein during a House Oversight Committee hearing with Michael Cohen in 2019, which she claims was about getting information from one of her constituents, Jeffrey Epstein, because Epstein Island is in the Virgin Islands. And a retaliatory move from Democrats condemning Florida Republican Corey Mills for sexual misconduct and threatening violence, among many other things that continue to come out even as we record. The Plaskett measure failed on the floor with some Republican defections, and the Mills measure essentially just went away, leading some Republicans to accuse their leadership of cutting a backroom deal, saying like, we won't censure or rebuke Plaskett if you let the Mills thing go. On top of all that, Florida Democrat Sheila Cherfilis McCormick has been charged in federal court with stealing $5 million in FEMA disaster relief funding awarded to her family's healthcare company to register people for COVID vaccines, of all things, and funneling that money to her congressional campaign. Cherfilis McCormick says she's innocent, but House Republicans are pursuing an immediate expulsion vote anyway. Whew. Let's start with MGP going after Chuy Garcia.
We can have a debate about whether censure was the right way to do it, but I think she did the exact right thing to be critical of him for it. I am pretty disgusted by the Democrats who reflexively defended what happened here. We cannot be the party who is talking about democracy all of the time and how corrupt Donald Trump is, and then turn a blind eye to what is a very obvious infringement on democracy and a bit of political corruption. Like he rigged the system for his chosen successor. And the other thing is just about this that upsets me is that one of the things that separates us from the Republicans of the Trump era, and really the Republicans even before the Trump era, is that Democrats had been willing to criticize other Democrats for doing wrong things. And if all of a sudden we're going to turn a blind eye to obvious wrongdoing, just because the person who did the wrongdoing is on our side, is we are becoming more like the Republicans than I am comfortable with. And now, that's not a majority of our party. A lot of people did speak up. But there really was this reflexive defense of Garcia that I thought was just really unfortunate.
The defense to me was really troubling and kind of surprising, especially from some members that I wouldn't have expected to do that. And the first defense that everyone said was, okay, well, this was, he announced his retirement last minute because he has health problems, and his cardiologist told him that he couldn't do it. And also he's just dealing with like the recent death of his daughter, and he's raising the grandkids. And I'm like, understood, that's horrible. And like announcing that you're retiring last minute in itself is not the problem. The problem is when he decided he was going to retire, even if it was last minute, he needed to tell everyone at the same time, and not just his chief of staff. Because she clearly then had time to get a couple thousand signatures to file, which means that other candidates who were interested could have had that time to file. And then they were like, well, he didn't really know and he didn't have anything to do with it. And then you look at the petition, and the Chicago Tribune found the petition, and he's the first signature on her filing deadline petition. So I'm like, so then that was the first thing. And then the next defense was, well, Gluesenkamp-Perez, she was grandstanding, and it shouldn't have been a resolution. And why are we doing it? Should have gone to the ethics committee. And it's like, okay, if you want to say, as a Democratic member or Democratic staff or strategist or all these people who are defending Garcia, if you want to say what he did was wrong, and it disgusts me that there's this kind of corruption, blah, blah, blah. Also, I think it shouldn't have been a resolution and it should have gone to the ethics committee. Fine. But most of the people that were complaining about MGP introducing this resolution didn't even say that what Garcia did was wrong. And I don't understand why you just can't say the words, it was wrong. Like, because otherwise, if you're just making excuses and you're talking about process, we think you think it's right.
At the exact, like that, like there's obviously a moral component to this. And there's also just like political malpractice here, which is just the people think with some good reason that the political system is broken and corrupt. And then when there is an example of corruption in a broken system and we turn a blind eye simply because that person's on our team, we validate everything they think. And if we are going to actually not just take the House by a few seats, but if we're going to take the Senate, win the White House, and actually rebuild the coalition that can govern this country, the American people have to believe that Democrats have the courage and the integrity to change the broken political system. And when we do things like this, it causes people to think, A, we will not do that, and B, maybe just to throw up their hands and say, fuck this, I'm not even going to get involved in politics. And that is a loss for us. That's a loss for democracy. This just doesn't seem that complicated to me. And just some of the conversations were happening about this on the floor of the House, on Twitter, were so mind-boggling. Like, yes, I'm sure, like, Chuy Garcia is going through a tough period in his life. You are colleagues with him. I understand that. But this is not high school. He's not the guy who just sits at your lunch table. You have to call it out.
It's the Biden shit all over again, right? It's like these people have spent so long in Washington and know all of their colleagues and are friends with them. And I get it. I'm like, still friends with all of my friends from Washington, right? But like, if you are a public servant, you have to put the country first and your constituents first. And if that means a tough conversation with your friend because you have to criticize them, even if you admire their lifetime of service, which clearly a lot of people do with Garcia, and good for them, then you have to do that. Like, that's just not. And the other defense that I didn't really buy at all was like, well, no one said anything when a Republican House member did this in 2024. I forget the guy's name. And I'm like, okay. This is
we should have said something then too.
But this is also the problem with taking we got to fight fire with fire to like the logical extreme, because it's like they don't play by the rules, so we shouldn't play by the rules kind of thing. And it's like there are times when that's true. In the redistricting fight, that is true because they are making a power grab, and it means that like we might not, they might take over the House unfairly, and so like we got to fight back. But with something like this, it goes back to your political point. Like even if you put aside the moral and ethical case for it, at least think that if you're a voter and you have to choose between, okay, well, the Republicans did this in 24 and then the Democrats did this in 26, don't we want a contrast?
Yeah.
Don't we want to show people that there's actually a real choice between the two parties? Isn't that how you win? Like, progressives are always saying that on ideas and on policy. Why are we going to just be Republican light with some policy? So why would we think that isn't the case when we're talking about corruption?
It's
crazy.
So dumb.
It's crazy. What do you think about this whole? So now everyone's like censuring, expulsions, rebukes. There are two Democrats. I think it's Don Bacon and Don Beyer. Don Beyer's a Democrat, Don Bacon's Republican. Are now trying to raise the threshold for a censure because they feel like it's like a race to the bottom with like both parties censuring each other. I wouldn't be opposed to that necessarily, but I also really don't, like. It's such a fucking Washington inside thing. It's like, you are censured. It's like,
sure, raise the threshold, don't raise the threshold. Who really cares? Like this is a little out of control. I'm just via tweets, I'm learning about new censures and honestly new members of Congress I didn't know existed before this, all at the same time. So that's exciting.
Yeah, the member who got indicted for that awful FEMA thing for stealing $5 million.
Yeah.
Never heard of her before.
Like if we were playing like Two Truths and a Lie with a member of Congress with three names, I would say that was the lie, like for sure. But the thing you have to do here is you need the ethics committee to work. Like there needs to be an actual process of adjudication that is viewed to be bipartisan and independent of the leadership. We haven't been in that place for a very long time, but that for this to really work, you have to do that because the censure thing is fake. I mean, I guess it matters. It obviously matters, but there's no consequences that come with it. Do you wear a scarlet C to the House floor for a while? I don't really know. So it's like it just seems ridiculous. And so raise the threshold, don't, but we need an actual process that holds these people accountable, that people, members and the public can trust.
One last thing before we turn it over to Tommy and Yasmin from Swing Left. On Friday, Trump is set to meet at the White House with his new arch nemesis, Zoran Mamdani, who he referred to as Communist Mayor Zoran Kwame Mamdani when announcing the meeting. We don't have a lot of details, though we'll probably know more by the time you're listening to this, but Mamdani said in an interview on Wednesday night, quote, "I want to just speak plainly to the president about what it means to actually stand up for New Yorkers and the way in which New Yorkers are struggling to afford this city." Both men love going after each other, but Mamdani has a lot on the line. The administration froze, or at least claimed to freeze, $18 billion in federal funding for New York City infrastructure projects during the shutdown. And Trump said before the election that he'd be, quote, highly unlikely to contribute more federal funds beyond the absolute minimum if Mamdani won. Asked about this in the briefing on Thursday, Caroline Leavitt said, "We'll see how the meeting goes." All right. You're Zoran Mamdani. You're going to the White House to meet Donald Trump. How would you advise him to handle that meeting?
Would I accept an invitation from Donald Trump to go to the White House right after he spent several days with MBS? Probably not. It seems... No, in all seriousness, we can decide whether we want to cut that joke or not. But
maybe live stream it so we're all there.
Yeah,
with you.
everyone knows. Yes, I think the way for Mamdani to think about this is you have to go, but you want to put yourself somewhere between, like one of these leaders like Keir Starmer, who comes in like bearing letters of congratulations from kings or gold bars, or
no glazing.
Tim Cook. Yeah, thank you. No glazing. Do not glaze, but also you don't want to be Zelensky, right? I think you want to come in and you want to be an advocate for New York and for all New Yorkers, and that's what you're there to do. And we're going to disagree on things, and where we can work together to help New York, we will. Be very tough and strong about no National Guard, about ICE raids, about if there are areas we can work together to lower prices, we should do that. And you have to come off as tough, because you're not like so tough that you seem like you're performative, but Trump only respects strength. And so if you go in there and you see, which is what I think some of the mistakes these leaders are making, like it's short-term gains by getting through the meeting without getting yelled at, by being so obsequious in the meeting, but you want to seem like you're not a punk. And so, and Zoran should have confidence in this, because the meeting's going to happen. Everyone, like, I assume some part of it there'll be a pool spray or whatever else, but also after the meeting, when it comes time to spin everything that happened, he can dominate the media space in a way that honestly Trump can't. Like, he can go out, he can do every podcast, every interview, all the social media, and put his spin on events in a way that Trump really will not have the time or energy to do. And Trump certainly won't get out of his bubble to do it.
I think the most important thing for him is to be tough and strong on behalf of the people of New York.
Yeah, it's all about New York.
Do not get into a personality fight with Donald Trump. Do not get into the mud with him on that. You can be tough and strong on hey, I'm representing a city where people can't afford to live and need help with costs, and and I'm going to fight for
a city of immigrants.
City of immigrants. Yes. You could, like he was on election night about the city is now run by an immigrant. You're going to have to come through us. And so I do think he can be tough on behalf of the people in New York, and should be, but Trump will try to draw him into just a personal back and forth. Yeah. And I don't think that helps him. I don't think performative toughness so it can go viral online is, I don't think that's Zoran's style anyway. No. So I actually don't think that will happen, but I do think you could imagine, you can imagine that happening, or at least that's what Trump wants to have happen.
Yeah, his goal is to be an advocate for New York. He's about to be sworn as New York mayor. He's going to run for election as New York mayor. He wants people to think he's fighting for New York, and not trying to fight some national political battle.
All right, one quick thing before we go to break. If you love our shows, or even if you just really like them but aren't ready to call it love yet, please consider subscribing to Friends of the Pod to support our work directly. Your subscription helps us keep making the shows, newsletters, and deep dives you enjoy. It also unlocks perks like ad-free episodes and exclusive content like Polar Coaster with Dan. Plus, it's a meaningful way to invest in independent progressive media. And if you need an extra reason to subscribe, we're offering 25% off annual subscriptions through November 30th. It's a great deal. We'd really appreciate your support. So head on over to crooked.com/friends now to subscribe.
Pod Save America is brought to you by Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol. Whether you're raising a glass to your team winning, catching up with old buddies back in town, or just trying to stay sane with a house full of relatives, how you feel the next morning really matters. That's why I drink Pre-Alcohol. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's a buildup of this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for rough days after drinking. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. I got to say, the Z-Biotics was flowing at Crooked Con. Everyone had them. It saved a lot of people. A lot of folks would have been worthless the next day, myself included, if not for Z-Biotics. I'm going to load up before the holidays this year. You know how it is. A lot of folks going out, a lot of folks at the house. You're going to need that Z-Biotics. Do not regret running out. Make the most of every toast, tailgate, and touchdown this holiday season. Just don't forget to bring pre-alcohol along for the ride. Go to zbiotics.com/crooked to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Crooked at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. Remember, head to zbiotics.com/crooked and use the code crooked at checkout for 15% off. Pod Save America is brought to you by Quince. Cold mornings and holiday plans. This is when I just want my wardrobe to be simple. Stuff that looks great, feels good, and things that I actually want to wear. For me, I can find it all at Quince. And the bonus, Quince pieces make great gifts too. This season's lineup is simple, but smart and easy with Quince. There's a $50 Mongolian cashmere sweaters that feel like an everyday luxury, and there's wool coats that are equal parts stylish and durable. Their denim nails the fit and everyday comfort at a fraction of what you'd expect to pay. By partnering directly with ethical factories and top artisans, Quince cuts out the middlemen to deliver premium quality at half the cost of other high-end brands, so you can give luxury quality pieces without the luxury price tag. Look, Quince has a lot of amazing stuff. As I've said, I've owned a bunch of the basics, like workout stuff, underwear, t-shirts, but they also have some really nice high-end stuff, jackets, really nice sweaters. There's things for the home, the bath, the kitchen, travel bags, like everything you want. Just check out their website. Give and get timeless holiday staples that last this season with Quince. Go to quince.com/crooked for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/crooked. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/crooked. I am so excited to be joined by Yasmin Radjy. She is the executive director of Swing Left, an organization I'm sure lots of listeners know about. But Swing Left has recently launched something called Ground Truth, which is this new nationwide program aimed at fundamentally changing how Democrats connect with voters. And we wanted to talk all about it. Yasmin, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Tommy. I'm excited.
I'm really excited to talk with you because, look, we spent a bunch of time off mic now, too, together. And what's cool about what you guys are doing is you are experimenting, you're testing and evolving the way we do voter contact and reach voters. But unlike many other organizations in this space, you're actually willing to talk about it publicly, which is so great because how else are we going to learn about it? And I think it's especially important now after the 2024 cycle when a lot of people feel like we spent all this time, we spent all this money, and then we lost. Like, what was the point? You guys are actually iterating and trying to make it better. And I think that's just great. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think it feels really obvious. And you and I have talked about this before, but it feels obvious in a moment of such consequence when the stakes are so high. And we obviously know that things didn't work, not just because we lost, and the losses have been incredibly painful for so many of us, for all of us as a country. But it's also like we're losing not just elections, we're losing so many of the voters that we used to have trust with. And so I think from our perspective, it feels like a no-brainer to try to do things differently. And I think what's been jarring is just how little of that is happening. And so excited to talk more with you. But we really believe that we're in a moment of, if we're not taking big swings, we're not taking some real risks, and we're not trying new things, and then also just being brutally honest about things that might not make us look good, but at least are truthful about what we need to do differently, then we're not taking this moment as seriously as we ought to.
Yeah, no, I want to get into some of those things that you, as you said, might not make, previous efforts look good,
But I think when you're asking your most committed volunteers and donors to give you their time, they need to believe that it's worth it. So that's why this is important. So tell me about Ground Truth. What is it, and what did you guys learn from this initial pilot program that I think just wrapped up, right?
Yeah, so Ground Truth is our big swing in this moment. And I think just a little bit of kind of background. Swing Left, we were founded right around the same time as you all at Crooked in response to the election of Donald Trump. We have always been about making sure that volunteers and donors are pointing their time and money toward the most competitive elections, because our overall way of seeing things is that we cannot have progress without power. So that is a constant. That's been constant from 2017 until now. But so many of the things that we've done, whether that's sending thousands of volunteers to go knock on doors in competitive swing districts near them, directing dollars, et cetera. So many of the things that we've done have been downstream of bad decisions and broken infrastructure. And so, with this moment of really high stakes, one of the things that we have felt really strongly about in the kind of post-2024 election period is, even with the wins that we just had a couple weeks ago in the 2025 elections, we can't take anything for granted, and we can't take those wins as an erasure of a real trust problem that Democrats have all across the country. And so we think that until we work really hard to rebuild that trust, we are not going to win in the meaningful ways that we need to. And the first step of building trust is listening. And so Ground Truth is our effort to reimagine voter contact, as you said rightly in the framing, really anchoring on deeper listening, more time with voters, not 2 weeks before the election in a sort of handing a pamphlet and keeping it moving every 90 seconds, but starting well over a year before the election. Our volunteers started going out and talking to voters September 6th, way earlier than they ever have in a competitive House district. And they're having deep, open-ended conversations where they are talking not just to ride or die Democrats, they're talking to everybody. So they're knocking on every door because, again, baked into some of the assumptions that we've made election after election after election are that we know everything about voters and we can predict their behaviors, and we know exactly who's someone who's always on our side and we just need to get them out, and who do we need to persuade. And those assumptions have not been right? Or else we would be better at predicting elections. So we're talking to everybody, and what our volunteers are doing is opening with a question of, saying that I'm a volunteer with Ground Truth, which is a program to help Democrats do a better job of listening. And then they just ask, how do you feel about the direction of our country? And I'm excited to get into what we, have learned in our pilot, what we've heard. But I think the biggest surprise from our volunteers is just how hungry people are to talk, including people who really disagree with us on policies and on issues. And we can get into the sort of, what that tells us about where we are as a country and the social isolation and so on. But people want to be heard, and people have a lot to share. And our volunteers are not policy experts; they're great listeners. So I'll pause there, and excited to share more about some of the substance of what we've learned as well.
Yeah, no, I do want to dig into the willingness to have conversations, because I think it's a bit counterintuitive, at least for me. But also, I just want to start with saying, look, anyone who's canvassed before has probably had a very different experience than what you're describing. Like a few weeks before the election, you go to some office, you go to some staging location, you get like a clipboard with some houses or addresses on it, or you download an app, you get your turf, and then you knock until you run out of houses. Most of the time, no one's home. You put a little leaflet in the door, and then you kind of leave thinking, like, was that valuable? Like, did I do something there? Maybe you have a conversation or two where you feel great about that person. What do you think Democrats are missing when they just sort of execute that traditional kind of field program?
So much. I mean, first of all, I think we are not being honest about just how broken we all know that process is. And we keep telling volunteers, trust me, this is the most important thing that you can do. And we're pointing to real research, but not the research that we are following in those canvases, right? And so, I heard from a state party leader as we were coming up with this program who said, Yasmin, I think voter contact is going to be done in 2 election cycles in the ways that we've done it. And so there is quiet behind the scenes recognition of the problem, and the problems are intuitive, right? We're talking to people too late. The conversations are too superficial. And again, we are talking to the same voters over and over and over. Something you didn't mention, but I know we hear from almost everybody who's canvassed is man, I was just talking to someone for the 7th, 8th, 9th time, and they're really frustrated, right? And so, for us, what ground truth, the kind of ingredients of what we need to do differently is, first of all, we can talk to people who are very different from us and we disagree with if we have more time, right? And so that's why we've got to start early. Number 2 is we have to listen. We can't just say, I'm here with this campaign and I need you to do something. That is not how humans do anything effectively, right? And we just keep doing that over and over again. And then importantly, something that we've heard for years from our volunteers, and maybe you've experienced this too, is sometimes, rarely, but sometimes they have a really deep, meaningful conversation with a voter. And that person really opens up to them. And they talk about how they feel about our country, how they feel about their community, et cetera. And those volunteers painstakingly write in the margins of their clipboard or in the notes section of their canvassing app all of the things that they heard, all of the things that voter needs to be convinced to vote at all or to vote for the Democrat. And then they walk back to the field office and they hand it over to a well-meaning organizer who has nowhere to put that information. And so all that organizer is incentivized to care about is how many doors did you knock, how many people were home, and then the sort of very superficial data there of how many people talked about abortion or the economy or whatever. And what our volunteers are experiencing and what our program does is when that volunteer has that deep, meaningful conversation, which is, by the way, 2/3 of the people who are answering the doors are having conversations of over 10 minutes. So that's just like way outside of the imagination of how we're used to this stuff. When they have that deep and meaningful conversation, the volunteer hits the record after the conversation is done. They've taken notes on paper. They hit record on their canvassing app and they repeat back everything that they just talked about. We give them the guidance of it's like a doctor would repeat back what they just talked about with a patient during a patient visit. So it's non-judgmental. You're not editorializing. If there's direct quotes that you wrote down in your scribbles, you repeat back those direct quotes so that we're really we're really able to understand that voter. And then all those notes that usually just get thrown out, what happens on the back end is we run AI, not on replacing the human conversation, but on making sense of, as people are talking, as they're sharing really personal things about their families. I mean, we hear about voters crying on the doors in these conversations. These are really like real and raw conversations that people are having. All of that on the back end, we are not just aggregating to say, how many people are talking about X and Y issues. What are the feelings behind those things? And importantly, those don't live and die in a swing left database. We share all of that data thanks to a new law that passed a new federal election rule. We share that all back with the campaigns so that we are not ourselves just sort of analyzing what does the voter care about, how should we follow up with them on maybe some material needs, like if they can't afford diapers or whatever the case may be, but also how do we make sure that the candidate, who structurally, most of our candidates are spending way too little time actually going out and talking to voters, not because they don't want to, but because that's not what they're incentivized to do. They're incentivized to spend most of their time fundraising. We get all that back to them so that they have a picture, not just through a poll, not just through a focus group that usually they can't even afford until very late in a cycle, of week to week, here's what voters are saying, here's what they need, and here's where your trust deficit is that may not even be about the candidate, but more broadly about the Democratic Party and Democratic brand.
Yeah, I mean, look, it just strikes me as a really smart and additive use of AI technology in service of a real problem, which, as you described, which is a lot of members of Congress get elected. You go to Washington, you aren't home in the district much. When you are, you're fundraising or you're going on trips. Like you just don't have, you lose touch with the people who voted for you, and you could see it happening. You talk to a freshman member, they are on it. They are like locked in. You talk to someone who's been there for 20 years, different story. So, this might surprise listeners a little bit because I talk about politics for a living, but that canvassing is not my comfort zone. It takes me like 10 minutes to get warmed up. I'll get there, but I don't love it. And mostly because when I knock on someone's door, I assume that they feel about me the way I feel about people who knock on my door, which is I tend to hate them and I want them to go away. The baby's crying and my dog starts barking and I'm just like, what is happening here? But one of the big takeaways from Ground Truth was voters really want these deeper conversations. I think you said like 2/3 of the people you connected with wanted to talk for up to 10 or 15 minutes. Why is that? What's the best way to use that time? Is it just listening? Is there some persuasion? Like, what did you guys learn?
Yeah, one of our volunteers wrote to us yesterday. We launched a bunch of the results of our pilot, and she wrote back, something that really strikes me is every time people talk about listening, they usually mean listen to me more, not I want to listen to you more, right? It actually is like a very countercultural thing to demonstrate authentic, open curiosity. And so I think how countercultural that feels in a moment of real social isolation, real sense that the problems before us are so overwhelming and so challenging that nobody can fix them, right? And the system is totally broken, which I want to talk more to you about, but that's the top issue that we're hearing on the doors from folks, far and above affordability. When all those things combine and someone comes to your door who is not running for office, they're not running for office, they don't come with a fancy glossy, paper to drop, and they really are open to hearing your perspectives, and they are promising not that they can solve them, right? These are volunteers, they're not magicians, but that they are going to communicate them back because they want to make sure that the party is shaped by that voter. That's something that it just feels very different from what people have imagined, what they expect. That's certainly what the voter that I talked to the longest this past weekend. I was out in Pennsylvania's 8th congressional district, one of the most competitive in the country. And one guy literally was running away from me. He had a wraparound porch and he was running to the other side. And I just went, I gave my little pitch and he was hysterical. He said, Democrats, you're here to help Democrats do a better job of listening. Have you heard the story of Sisyphus? And I cracked up and it was just like the whole thing was, nothing was computing with what he expected I was there to do. We ended up talking for 20 minutes and having a really meaningful, substantive, and quite personal conversation.
That's great. I mean, it's funny. What you're describing just so perfectly jives with sort of my personal experience canvassing. Like when I was in Iowa, I've told the story on the pod before, but my boss used to like to haze us a bit. And so one day, Saturday morning, we all have a meeting and he tells all the senior staff, I was like a press guy, like, okay, you're all canvassing this weekend. I put a bunch of names of counties in a hat, reach your hand in and pull one out. And slowly we realized that he'd only done like the border counties. So I got Worth County. I basically drove 2 hours to Minnesota. I knocked on doors in this town. Literally no one was home. I swear to God, not a single person answered the door. And then finally, I see a lady on a ride-on mower, like mowing her lawn. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to talk to her because who cares? Maybe I'll talk to one human being today. And she turned the thing off. We talked for 10, 15 minutes. By the end of it, she signed a supporter card, which means she was a one, said she caucused for Obama. Was never on anyone's list, was not on my knock list. It was just sort of a new name that we had started into the system. But it was one of the more meaningful experiences I had doing field work. And it was because I just, in that moment, talked to everyone and didn't get stuck on this stupid list. So what you're describing, the reason campaigns usually don't do that is because, as you said, you have limited time, you have limited volunteers. If everyone's talking for 20 minutes, you're just going to hit, in aggregate, fewer houses. But there's a real quality over quantity thing that I think you're getting at that will resonate with most people that have done field work.
That's exactly right. And, something that Jon Tester has talked about is in his very first run I forget if he ran for the state House or Senate in Montana, but a state seat. And he was handed sort of an analysis of the voters that he ought to talk to. And he was just like, I'm going to throw this out. I don't think this targeting understands my people. And he knocked every door. And he attributes that of trusting his intuition about his district. And sometimes candidates shouldn't trust their intuition. Sometimes there is really good research. So we've got to back everything up, right? But I think we have sort of, we're overthinking some things that we have to do when, as you said, we have limited time. If we don't have the money for field staff until 2 months before the election, then you better be targeting and you better be using pretty smart and very limited lists. But, I think going back to the gravity of this moment, something that we hear a lot from volunteers is they feel like they're in a moment of, whether our country is going to be able to get back on track is up to what happens in the next couple of years, not in the next decade, right? It's really we're in an urgent moment that is going to take us on some very different paths. And they keep reflecting, all they're being asked to do is to donate $5 by midnight by, a whole host of organizations, sign this petition, maybe come join a protest. And then they're looking around and they're like, okay, but what's next? What's the strategy? What do I do? And so a part of this is also inviting people in. Our volunteers are intelligent adults. folks who listen to this podcast are following the news, care a lot. They're not listening to podcasts like this because they don't care about our country. On the contrary, it's because they deeply care. Let's invite them to be not just sort of people that we say, go do this, click here, click that, but come be a part of reimagining something together and learning together. And every week in our pilot, our volunteers have given us feedback on the tech, on the scripts, et cetera, to help make it better and better every week. And that iteration is only possible in an all hands on deck moment.
Yeah, our voter contact can't just be like an increasingly hysterical series of text messages. Like, we got to get past this stuff. So Vote Forward, which is an organization that's affiliated with Swing Left, did another really interesting experiment where you guys were sending letters to voters in key states. You did this over the course of several years, and then you rolled out some of the findings. I think it was in the Atlantic a couple months back. So we're talking old school snail mail, none of this fancy AI crap you got in this new program. Can you tell us about the Big Send program, how it evolved over time, and like what that program taught you about voter contact generally?
Yeah. So Vote Forward, as you said, Swing Left's nonpartisan affiliate, started as a randomized control trial, which, as you know, is the sort of gold standard in really researching whether an intervention, in this case, a letter written by a volunteer to a voter, does it actually move the needle or does it just feel good to write? And the very first letters that were written were for the Alabama special election way back in the before times. And the effect of those letters in turning out voters who, you know, based off of how frequently or infrequently they vote, their demographics, their age, and so on, are likely to be, you know, Democrats, but may not know that an election is happening in a special, et cetera. We had a very significant, measurable effect in the multiple percentage points, which in nerd speak is sort of like mind-blowing.
A massive moving of the needle.
Like unheard of. Yeah. Our founder, Scott Foreman, called the folks at the Analyst Institute that runs a lot of the experiments around voter contact. He was like, can you double check my work? It was just really amazing. And so Swing Left and Vote Forward ended up moving under one umbrella in 2019. And in the 2020 cycle, going back to a time where we couldn't really knock on doors in many parts of the country, we wrote about 10 million letters to voters to, again, turn them out across the country. And again, we had an incredible effect size. We turned people out. We could measure it. It wasn't a feeling. It was real science. And so we've kept on doing it, right? It's something that works. People love writing letters. You can do it from anywhere. And every year, every election cycle, our impact has just been getting a little smaller. Mm-hmm. So we've tried different ways. Okay, well, what happens if you put a Post-it in the letter? The effect size is bigger than if you didn't. All these kinds of ways of, let's not just trust what's worked before, let's keep tweaking it. Fast forward to 2024, all these letter writers came in, wrote, we hit all our goals for, hit millions of letters all across the country. We felt great about it. We go back, we run the randomized control trial. There's some impact, but it's within the margin of error. It's not something that we should brag about. We could package it up and brag about it just to look good on the internet. But the truth is, the efficacy of this tactic that for years and years has been incredibly effective in the same ways that we've been doing it is not working as well as it used to. Same thing happened with text messages. I remember in 2018, I thought text messages, it was the most amazing thing in the world. They were moving voters. We could measure it. Now I don't read a single text message on my phone if it's not from a number that I don't know, right? And so what we did that you referred to is rather than just share with our hardcore volunteers, hey, this is what we learned, we're going to sugarcoat it a little bit, we'll do things differently, trust us. We said, let's be brutally honest about what we saw, which is that this thing that we invested tons of money, tons of not just our staff time, but volunteers all across the country who painstakingly every night, and we'd hear from people who'd say, every night when I put my kids down, I'd make sure I wrote at least one letter. This is really like meaningful stuff for them. We shared the results that we knew would break some hearts to say, we can't measure that we had any impact with those millions of letters. And the reason that we did that is because not only do we think that's the right thing to do, but if we are serious that we are in a moment of tremendous gravity, and we just pretend like everything's fine and that the things that we did were effective, which is unfortunately what a lot of the ecosystem is doing, then we either are lying that we think this moment is really serious or we are going to keep losing, right? Yep. And so rather than just put a sort of buried page on our website, we pitched to The Atlantic, can you cover a thing that didn't go well for us? And the feedback that we got from folks who, honestly, the advice we got is don't do this. You're never going to raise any money. People are never going to volunteer for you again. The feedback that we got was, thank you for your honesty. It is so refreshing, and count me in for whatever's next, right? And so I think that to us, that is not just a phew moment. It is a confirmation of what we know, which is that volunteers and donors are adults who really, really give a shit about this country. And if we infantilize them by not being honest with them about what works and what doesn't, by just asking them, click $5 by midnight, then again, we're either not serious about the gravity of this moment, or we don't think that they're serious people. And I think either of those is a total misunderstanding of the all hands on deck moment that we're in.
Totally agree. And this is honestly why I love your approach. And like, just for listeners, like, this is actually the second time I've interviewed you on mic. The first time I was trying to put together an entire Sunday episode about like learnings like this and experimentation that's happening. And like, you were one of only 2 people that was willing to talk to me. Everyone else says like, oh no, we can't disclose our research because we don't want to give that secret sauce to the Republicans. And I guess, look, I mean, I take them, like, these are good people doing hard work. Like, I'm not trying to like minimize it, but like, why isn't that a concern for you, that you're somehow, giving up the code for winning elections, or the formula for winning elections to Republicans?
I mean, I think our customer at Swing Left is the volunteer and the donor. And so they are who we care about, who we wake up every day thinking about. Everybody who is listening to shows like this, who's reading the news, who, cares a lot and isn't sure what they can do to help. If we take seriously that our job is to help bring them on the journey of using their time and dollars in an effective way, we cannot lie to them, and we also can't steer them towards ineffective tactics or ineffective programs. And so, again, going back to not just on the vote forward side with our sort of honesty about what didn't work, but with ground truth, we were like, okay, we could just keep having people canvass the same ways we've always been doing, even though we know it doesn't work, but that's lying to them when we say we're directing you to the highest impact actions. So again, I think this stuff it is actually quite intuitive. It feels countercultural because the incentives of our world are the way that they are. It's not bad people, it's bad incentives. Mm-hmm. And not to sort of leap back to the voter side, but I do think there's some important connective tissue, which is, as I mentioned to you a little bit earlier, the top issue that we heard in our ground truth pilot canvasses, which was in 25 canvasses in congressional districts across the country, I expected the top issue would be affordability. It was not the top issue. The top issue with Republicans, with independents, with Democrats, every district that we were in was a feeling that the system is broken, that both parties suck, and that nobody actually gives a damn about that person, that community, their district, their town, whatever the case may be. And, that is not a reaction to a specific news story. It's not a reaction to like a specific moment. But people do read the news. Swing voters maybe a little less than your listeners. But when they see story after story, like I was just, as I mentioned, in Pennsylvania's 8th congressional district, the Republican representing that district, Rod Bresnahan, he's someone who ran his campaign last cycle on an end corruption, members of Congress shouldn't do stock trading platform, which resonated with people who were upset about the system. Turns out he is one of the top stock traders in Congress. Turns out he used his winnings to buy a helicopter in a district where people can't afford grocery prices, right?
So like, buy a helicopter. Sorry.
It is bananas. It's also like, are you not aware that people are looking at you and can see what you're doing? But whatever, don't get me started. The Republicans are not really caring about the hypocrisy that they embody. So of course we need to talk about that, and of course we will attack that. But we also need to have a mirror to ourselves too, which is, it's not like Democrats have perfectly clean hands either, right? It's not like I can't think of a Democrat who has bought a helicopter with insider stock trading. But, just this week, a story that's been looming large in my imagination is this Chuy Garcia story of, Chuy Garcia is someone who, for Swing Left members, he's a champion on the issues that they care about. He is centering working people. He's done incredible work in Congress. And for listeners who are not dorks like you and me who've followed this story very closely, he on the very last day of the filing deadline for his district, years and years representing this district, he suddenly bows out, and turns out only his chief of staff had filed. And the kicker was, as you well know, Tommy, she had filed days earlier with a document showing that Chuy Garcia had been the first person to sign her nominating petition. So I say that because, it is, I think, the contrast of buying a helicopter and doing some sort of funny business of maybe it's not insider trading, but it's like some kind of inside maneuvering. There's some contrast there, but when voters say the system is broken, both parties suck, and what we hear over and over again is voters, even Dems, really strong Dems, will say, I'm sorry, what do Democrats stand for besides being anti-Trump? We've got to do a much better job of re-anchoring candidates on those feelings, because even if they talk about grocery prices all day and night, if they don't get, first of all, that voters feel like the system is broken, and second of all, that even strong Dems do not feel like the Democratic Party has clean hands, then they are not going to be able to be effective at making the case for winning. And by the way, I don't think that we're going to have the most amazing, talented, magical communicators in every single frontline and red to blue district in the country. And I think that's okay. With a program like Ground Truth, what volunteers can do is make sure that even a candidate who is not the best messenger, who is not amazing on TikTok, is able to be anchored in what people actually care about and just why they care about it. And I think that, again, feels really intuitive, but is a pretty dramatic culture shift and is pretty countercultural in a party that is increasingly, not just in a party, in a politic across party lines that is more and more removed from the ground.
Agreed. Final question. If people want to be a part of this, how can they get involved in Ground Truth or Swing Left generally? What can they do?
Yes. Well, we would love for them to go to swingleft.org/Ground Truth. They can get involved. Most folks listening who don't live in a competitive congressional district might think, this is not a program for me. I live in LA or in DC, like me and Tommy. Almost every American lives within 90 minutes of a competitive congressional district. So starting in January, you will be able to join us in the closest district to you. So again, swingleft.org/Ground Truth. And then coming up on December 9th, we are having a call for anybody, whether they are new to Swing Left, whether they are longtime volunteers, first-time canvassers, never canvassers, whatever, or people who've been knocking doors forever and ever. They can come learn more about the program and also about our strategy and why we're prioritizing the districts that we are. And then the last thing that I'll just say, that's on the kind of brass tacks, but I do want to kind of just not to be overly pessimistic, but to be sobering. I think a lot of the mood, and seeing you at CrookedCon, I saw this a lot among the attendees there, is we won in 2025, we won back all the voters, everything's good, we've got everything on lock. And so
work
the blue
ain't
wave
done,
is
people.
coming.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as someone who is very I'm anxious daily about the stakes of this moment and are we doing everything that we can, we just have to remember what we remembered back in 2018 and subsequent elections, which is blue waves do not happen on their own. And so if folks come and join us with Ground Truth and come and knock on doors with us, we think that that is a way to not just do a one-click, but really sink their teeth into the project of reshaping our party, reshaping our politics. And whatever folks do, it's important that all of us do something and not wait too long, because the clock is ticking and we live in very unpredictable times. So we got to control what we can control.
No time like the president to get involved. Yasmin, thanks for the great work you're doing. Thanks for the great work Swing Left is doing and for talking to me today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Tommy.
That's our show for today. Thanks to Yasmin Radjy for coming on. On Sunday, you'll get Alex's great CrookedCon panel with Ruben Gallego, Brian Schatz, and Pramila Jayapal about what a Democratic Congress would deliver, and Tommy's conversation with former FTC chair and current Mamdani transition advisor, Lena Khan. Talk to everybody then.
Bye, everyone.